What's up, everyone? It's AG Reviews, back at it again. I know it's been a while, but obviously this week we have a huge release with the final season of Stranger Things. So I figured this would be the perfect time to stop right before the Volume 1 release on Wednesday and rank all of the previous seasons from worst to best. And for me, this is my first time rewatching the series, honestly, since each season individually aired. I have watched the show since the beginning, but it's never been a season that I've really went back and rewatched. So, kind of going on this journey and rewatching the four seasons leading up to the release of Stranger Things season 5 has almost been like rewatching the whole show again. And I gotta say, I really enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun. I think this is definitely one of the better shows in the last 10 to 15 years. And it was just a lot of fun. I don't think any of these seasons are particularly bad. So if you disagree with me on, my ranking and where I place the seasons, I don't have a problem with that because again, I don't really think any of these seasons are necessarily bad. There's just ones I like more than others. So with that being said, let's get into the ranking. Coming in last in my ranking, is going to be season 2 of Stranger Things. And like I said, I enjoy all the seasons of this show. I don't think any of these are bad or that I didn't enjoy them. But the reason, I think season 2 has some things that don't really work well for it and kind of what holds it back from me loving it. But to start off with the positives on the season, I really love the continuation of the story. A lot of people, somewhat myself included, kind of did feel like this show could have been really, really great as just a one season miniseries. I'm obviously, from where we're going in this ranking, glad they did continue it. But I do feel that this did a great job continuing the story and justifying its existence. I really love the kind of darker and grittier tone that this one goes for, which, eventually is what the show becomes and kind of culminates with season 4, which we'll talk about here in a minute. But this kind of established the bigger stakes and the darker tone that would later come in the rest of the show. And I felt like that this season did a particularly good job on that. I also felt the addition of the new characters were awesome. Bob was great. I know he's kind of he started the trend of like the side character that everyone loves that ends up getting killed off. So I thought he was great. Obviously, the addition of Billy and Max in this season, with kind of the mystery of who Mad Max was at the beginning, I really liked that. I really liked the progression of the relationship between Hopper and Eleven in this season. I felt that was really, really strong. And just overall, too, I felt bringing Will back into the mix, obviously, because he was gone for the majority of the first season. I felt like that was a good addition, and kind of having him be used the entire season by the Mind Flayer, I felt was really, really well done. But some of the things about this season that didn't really work for me and why it's the last, but my least best, right? Not really my worst, but the one I probably enjoyed the least. And the one really on this rewatch it stood out for me was this season kind of felt like filler overall. Now I do think that there are nuggets that were put into the season that get paid off later on and get brought back later on that I felt like were really important. But overall, it just felt like a season that didn't really accomplish all that much. And it felt like a lot of things were retreaded from the original season, but they weren't done as well here. So I felt like that was a little bit of the problems that I had with season 2. I also felt like, too, that this is kind of this is the season that set up one of the trends that I kind of dislike the most about the later seasons, where it started to spread the characters out. In season 1, it felt like such a contained story, and it felt like everything was connected. Whereas this is kind of where people started to spread out a little bit and have their own storylines over here and over there. So for me, that was, again, it introduced that aspect that I feel like was even something I didn't like in the later seasons as well here. And for me, I wasn't a huge fan of that. But yeah, like I said, overall, obviously too, I forgot to talk about my filler comment was really most realized in that episode 7 episode with Elle where she goes and finds their sister and everything like that, which I found very odd, was never brought up again. I thought that would be definitely something that would get brought up. But yeah, overall, I do enjoy this season. I did like it. But to me, it's the one I enjoyed the least out of all of them, especially on this rewatch. I kind of felt that way too originally when I saw it, that it felt like a bit of a step down from the first season. And to me, it comes in fourth in last, even though I still enjoyed it. Coming in at number 3 is going to be the most recent season, Stranger Things Season 4. And obviously, this is the most popular season of the show. I don't know if it's just because of the time it came out, but obviously this season in particular has been memed to death. I think pop culture wise, yeah, it was really huge when it first started in 2016, but I don't think there's anything that compares to the impact and like everyone having their eyes on this season than season 4. And I loved what we got here. I mean, even rewatching it just now, I literally just finished the last episode about an hour ago, and yeah, it's a lot to take in. It is such a grand, epic season. There's so much that happens. This feels like 9 movies in this season. I mean, each episode is at least an hour and a half, which, is crazy. I think what was done here and what the Duffer Brothers did here was an accomplishment in its own right. Do I want every TV show to do this? No. I think Stranger Things is unique in its own way, that it earned being able to do something like this, and that's what the culmination was of season 4. To me, Vecna is the best villain of this show. Everything with his backstory, who he is, his ties to Eleven, is great. He's very menacing. I mean, very menacing. And he brings the strongest horror elements to the show, which I enjoy, obviously. I'm a huge horror fanatic. And I loved what he brought as a villain to this show. There's a lot that works about this season for me, and Vecna is absolutely the number one. And man, the performances of this season are just fantastic. Like I said, Vecna, I'm blanking. Jamie Campbell Bower, I think is his name. Great as the villain in this season. Obviously, the standout character of Eddie Munson right there. He's probably the best character in the show that was only introduced in a later season. It's like I said, from season 2 on, we pretty much have like one character introduced every single season that, stands out, steals the show, everyone falls in love with. And I think of all the characters, Eddie Munson is the best. Joseph Quinn just gives an amazing performance as him. Very lovable, very very relatable in what he does as a character in this season. And I just love that whole storyline. I loved his performance. Sadie Sink as Max, this is her best season by far. Dear Billy, episode 4, is genuinely one of the best episodes of this entire show. And I think even what she does in the finale is great as well. And the performances all around here are just top-notch, phenomenal, and really well done. And to kind of just wrap up my positives here, I just really feel like the grand scale epicness of this season was very enjoyable and just very unique. Something we've really never gotten from a TV show on this level. Like, yeah, we've had things like Game of Thrones, but I think what they do in this season in particular was just reaching for another level that we've just never seen before in television. But while I say that, and, while I give it its praises for going big, for going bold, for going ambitious, I do believe that's what brings this season down for me, especially on the rewatch. I think it was a little bit easier when I saw it when it released and they did the Volume 1 and Volume 2. Kind of splitting it apart a bit didn't make me really feel it. But my God, this season is way too long. Don't get me wrong. There are some episodes here that I think really benefit from having the longer runtime. But there are more episodes than not that, because of that runtime, just drag and go on way too long. Particularly in the first volume. I really didn't feel like, for me, Dear Billy, episode 4 is really where it kicked off and got great. those first three episodes, I was like, "Ooh, this is a little rough." Rewatching, it takes a little bit of a break for 5 and 6. I feel like those were a little underwhelming as well. 7 was the end of volume 1 when it was released. That one's great. That's where you get the backstory about Elle and 1 and everything like that. That was fantastic. And then volume 2 with the 2 final episodes, I felt like were really, really good and really, really strong and really did need those runtimes to do what they did in those episodes. But out of the 9 episodes, I really believe there's about 5 of them that went too long that just didn't need to be. And what I talked about in season 2, how that's the season that kind of introduced the separate storylines and the characters, getting away from one another and having stuff done in different areas and different cities, environments, and stuff like that. This one is really where I felt it the worst. Basically, there's 3 separate locations in this storyline. You have the crew in Hawkins, which is like Nancy, Steve, Robin, Dustin, Eddie, Max, Lucas. That was where the best stuff was happening. The whole Hawkins storyline, that's where Vecna was. That was the best storyline by far of this season. And then you had the whole storyline in California with Mike, with Will, with Jonathan, with Argyle, and I cared about nothing there. I'm just going to be 100% honest. None of that worked for me whatsoever. I felt like that's where a lot of the filler came from. You could have got rid of like 90% of what we did there. Some of it was important, obviously, with the development of Will and Mike, but for the most part, wow. I did not, I couldn't believe how much I didn't care about that. I didn't care about Argyle. I'm kind of happy he's not coming back. I liked the brief visit with Susie, but felt weird because I really like Susie with Dustin, so not having that element there felt really, really strange. Just did not like that. And then you have the Russia plot line with Murray, Joyce, Hopper, Yuri, and that whole line. The guard, I can't remember his name. I did like him. Which, I could take or leave that. I understand. We kind of wrote ourselves into a hole in season 3, so I understand why we got there, and it didn't really work, but for the most part, those 2 plot lines I really didn't care about, and we spent a lot of time with them. This just felt like a bunch of director cut episodes from the Duffer Brothers, and I really felt like this season could have been like the best season of the show if it was just trimmed down. There was just way too much stuff going on, way too many plot lines all over the place, and I didn't care. The ending though was fantastic. I can't lie. That finale being 2.5 hours, that was earned. That's where you should have put the majorly big episode was there, because it earned it, and it worked really, really well. And obviously I love where we left off and where we're leading going into Stranger Things Season 5. Coming in at number 2, and I know this might be a little controversial, is going to be the original season, Stranger Things Season 1. I absolutely love this season, and honestly, when I was rewatching it, I thought to myself, I don't think any of these seasons are going to beat this season after the rewatch. Obviously, that ended up changing, which we'll get to in a minute. But everything about this season I absolutely loved. It is such a tight, beautiful sci-fi season of television, and that is something that's gone, right? That it can never. This show, because of how big it went and how bold it went, which I really appreciate they did, and that's what made it fresh, right? And it kept it strong into the 4 seasons. But there is something about this season and how tight it was, how small it was, how every single character is connected that we'll never get again. And it's not going to happen with Season 5. We're going bigger in Season 5. So what this season did will always feel special to me, and will always feel it'll have a special place in my heart always, because of how incredible it was. It kind of revitalized the whole like 80s nostalgia thing, which we can have arguments and discussions about if that's a good thing or not. But it did it, and it did it very effectively. It did it through storytelling. It did it through characters. It did it through a great story, a great plot. Like, there was really no fat on this season whatsoever, no time wasted. I love how the Demogorgons and the sci-fi elements of this were kind of kept a mystery for a majority of the season, so you didn't really know what was going on the first time you saw it. Everything about this season was just great. There's really not a whole lot of negatives that I have about it. I mean, there is, but like it's really not crazy stuff or anything like that because so much of it just works. All of the characters here are fantastic. I think a lot of writing wise, everyone here, like how equal everyone is on the writing side of their characters and their arcs and their development was just fantastic. And obviously, it's the one that started it all. There's just a special feeling about this season that, like I said, I don't think will ever be done again. Even in 5 coming out, I don't think it's going to do the same tone, the same vibe, because I don't think it can. This was lightning in a bottle when it hit. And like I said before, there is a world where this is the only season of this show and it was a miniseries that I think would have worked. And, overall, do I think we should have did that? No, but I think that there's a world where this could have been a miniseries and it would have been in infamy. It would have lived on forever, and we still would be talking about it to this day. So yeah, I mean, I love this season. The only things, like, there's really only like two small things about this that don't, not that they don't work, but like why it's not my number one. And that's obviously the whole nostalgia element of this, what it inspired. It was a little bit too nostalgia baity, and it was too predictable. Like, there was a lot of things here where we've been there, done that. It's a love letter to the 80s, but it also does a lot of things the 80s movies and TV show did. So that, it relies too much on that, I think, a little bit. And again, that it's really a criticism for the whole show, right? And I feel all the seasons kind of stem from that, but this season in particular is the one that started it and made that trend and really impacted everything. And that kind of goes to show how big of an impact and how much of a cultural phenomenon this show has been, that this season of television did so much. But yeah, that was kind of a negative for me. And then too, like, I don't know, I just feel like looking at this as one story, it is really good, but I just don't think it reaches the highs of a season that we're going to talk about here in a minute. And I think in context with the whole watch of all 4 seasons, it brings it down just a little bit, and that's really it though. Overall though, absolutely love this season, and look forward to rewatching it again in the future. I'm surprised it took me so long to actually rewatch this show and these seasons, because like I said, this is only my second rewatch of all of them. So I really enjoyed this season though on that rewatch. But man, I can't believe I'm saying this. My number one is actually Stranger Things season 3, and I feel like when I watched this season for the first time, it was either between this or 2 of as my least favorite season of the show. So I was very surprised when I rewatched this season and I liked it, and it jumped up so significantly in my rankings to actually being my favorite season of the show. Start off right off rip. I believe that this season in particular has the best aesthetic, the best vibe. I know that's what a lot of people talk about. We do the kind of 4th of July summer background here. And I think that feeling, that vibe is what encapsulates the 80s more than any other season of this show. And I know some people will say you're crazy. Season 1 is the one that does that. But to me, this time frame is most encapsulated by this season. And I just love that aesthetic, the vibe, the whole mall situation, the kind of commentary on the mall and what it does to small businesses and everything. Which is kind of crazy, like in 2025 context to, think about when it's like, well, malls are dead now, right? So, but this was such a groundbreaking thing back in the 80s, and it was ruining people's lives, and you don't really think about it that way. So yeah, we got more positives to get into, but to me, this season just encapsulates everything that I love about this show. This is the season of the show where, for me, the feeling of a coming-of-age story really reared its head and really came to full fruition with all the kids and everyone in this season. Obviously, like, the relationship between Hopper and Elle, where Elle's kind of acting out and being super teenagey angst and romance with Mike, just to get him mad. And I felt, as a dad of girls myself, I felt like Hopper was probably the most relatable that he's been in this season in particular, because you kind of get to see him in that normal day-to-day life of being a dad. Like, it wasn't that way in season 2, obviously, because Elle couldn't, like, go out in public and everything, but this is like, no, this is the first season you're actually seeing Hopper in dad mode, and he's very relatable in that instance. But I just like the way that the relationships of all the characters kind of matures as they're now getting older and changing and doing things differently. I felt like that was perfectly encapsulated with Mike and Will. I felt like Will still wanting to kind of have that childlike innocence, because a decent amount of his childhood was kind of taken away from him with all the trauma he's dealt with. So he kind of just wants to go back to the way it was, with him and the boys all playing D&D, and Mike's not there for him in that way, because Mike's growing up and he's in love with Eleven and dealing with their problems. I know people brag on it, but I really like the dynamic between Nancy and Jonathan in this one. They're a little bit on the ropes. They're having trouble. It's not a retread of season 1 like I felt season 2 was. And they're kind of trying to navigate through working for this, like Hawkins Journal or whatever it was. I don't remember the name. And them, kind of trying to figure out what's going on with everything, with the Mind Flayer and the rats going crazy and everything like that. And Billy's arc, I know that's kind of controversial in this season, but I really like what they did with Billy, with kind of him, the Mind Flayer, taking control of him and, flipping a switch. Although we find out really it was Vecna, which I know that's a big topic of debate right now, with the show, of like who's really in control. But after rewatching season 4, it's pretty clear to me Vecna is the one in control. I know there's the play and everything, but I don't know. I'm not really buying that until I see it on screen in the film. But yeah, I like what they did with Billy. Like, he really, when he has to take like that dark turn, I felt like he does a really good job, Decree Montgomery, of acting in that way. They kind of showed you a little bit of that in season 2, but obviously when he's like fully possessed in this season, he has to fully commit to that, and I felt he did a really, really good job. And then too, when it came to the villain with the Mind Flayer kind of manifesting in the real world, I really felt like it made the stakes of this season feel the biggest that they have felt across the show. Now, I'm not going to... it's obviously not as big as it was in season 4, but up until this point, when I was rewatching it, I was like, whoa, I really felt the step up that we took. And it really felt like in season 3 is where the show said, okay, we know where we're going. We know where this is going to end. And we're now taking you to that big cinematic feel. And the action sequences, everything about that made this kind of feel like it had the same tropes of like a summer blockbuster. And I felt like that was really, really well done here. I also felt, again, the new characters that were introduced this season were really, really well done. Robin, obviously, is one of my favorite characters in the Stranger Things series, and her introduction here was fantastic. It was a huge knife in the heart, when you get the bathroom scene between her and Steve. And you find out the truth about Robin and everything, because you're just rooting for Steve to find that happiness. But I really, really like how it played out, and I loved the introduction of her. I also really liked Alexei. Like I said, he was kind of the sub character that was introduced, who is lovable and then ends up getting killed by the end of the season. I thought he was good. His dynamic between Murray, Joyce, Hopper, I felt like worked really well. A lot of people rag on the Russian, plot line with them having the mall and, the whole underground bunker. I do have some reality complaints about like how that possibly happened in such a short amount of time. But, I'm not going to nitpick like that on like realism and how it all played out. But I didn't hate the Russian storyline here. I actually liked it much better here than I did in season 4. So I think in that sense, it does a better job. But yeah, I mean, overall, with the subplots, I didn't have as much as a problem with people being separated and kind of having their own subplots going on. as I did in other seasons. And I think that's what makes this feel so strong, because it's like it still keeps that where there's multiple subplots, but it feels big, it feels epic, and a lot of them worked for me. I don't think there was any that were particularly weak. Yes, there are some that are weaker than others, but they're not all, like, there's not any of them that are weak like I felt like there were in season 4. If I have a negative to say about this season, which I do about every season, that's the whole point of making this video, it did get a little goofy in the tone. I felt like it could have been a little bit more serious like season 4, but season 4 I felt like went too horror and too dark. I feel like there was a good balance somewhere that could have been between season 3 and 4, but overall, I really feel like season 3 is the best season of the show. One that, like I said, jumped the most in my rewatch of this series, and one that I think when I go back and rewatch again in the future, I think is going to be the one that I'm just going to have the most fun with, and the one that feels most like what I love about Stranger Things is this season. So Stranger Things Season 3 comes in at number 1. All right, guys, so that's it. That's my ranking of the first 4 seasons. Obviously, we got Season 5, Volume 1 starting on Wednesday. So, this list in a little over a month is going to change. I'm hoping we get some great things. I'm hoping that this season really delivers and gives us a worthy final season and a final episode conclusion. A lot of shows that go on for a long time, they drop the ball at the end. That's a very reoccurring theme in TV. It's very rare that shows actually stick the landing, but to me, Stranger Things has kept a good enough quality over the first 4 seasons where I think, if they get it right, they can be one of the few shows that actually has a good ending. So, yeah, man, I'm excited. I can't wait. I'm fully caught up. I got until Wednesday, and I'll be watching. I'll probably watch the first 4 episodes within 24 hours when they drop, maybe not all at once. But yeah, I'm super excited. So go ahead, guys, comment below. Let me know what your rankings of the seasons are, and let me know how excited you are for Season 5 to finally be here. I mean, it took a long time. Big gaps between the last 3 seasons, so I'm glad we're just finally here, and we're finally going to get the ending. And hopefully it's been worth the wait. So that's all for me, guys. Everybody, have a great night.